Hello, my name's Phil Winder, and I'm the CEO of Winder AI. As you're aware, as an AI agency, we are interested in the upcoming EU AI Act. And as part of that, we've been doing a series of webinars all about the implications, the ideas behind, and in this case, we're going to talk to one of the authors of the AI Act. I'm really pleased to introduce Kai Zenner, who is Head of Office and Digital Policy Advisor at the European Parliament. I sat down a few weeks ago to talk more about the EU AI Act and the impact he had and what he thought about it. Over to you, Kai.
So indeed, I'm working in the European Parliament for the past 7.5 years actually already, and was quite from the beginning around 2018, 2019 involved in AI policy. Back then, the European Union was figuring out what to do, and over the past years, our involvement in the prep work then ended in very, very strong involvement in the AI Act, which my boss Axel Voss and myself followed as so-called shadow rapporteur. So he was the representative of one of the political groups. And with this role, basically, he and I were very closely involved and actually wrote parts of the final AI Act that you now have seen all. And
Okay, wow,
the second question was the future. So for the future, now that the AI Act has been finalized and became applicable now on the 1st August, basically we still will follow very closely what is happening now. So we will look how the European Commission and the member states are implementing the new law. Then we will also try to involve ourselves in the so-called drafting of secondary legislation, delegated acts, guidelines, and so on. So there will be a lot of additional rules or frameworks that are complementing the AI Act. And on top of that, we will also deal with AI liability directive, with GDPR review, and so on and so on. So a lot of AI and data related policies that the European Union will look into in the next 5 years.
So yeah, it sounds like there's a lot left to do, even
Yes.
though it's just been signed. I still think that many people are unaware of what it is. So could you just, for those people, give a short recap of what the Act is, why now, and anything related to that?
Yes, sure. So as I said already, the European Union started quite early to think about AI policy, why and how we should regulate AI. As I said in 2017, 18, 19. Back then, basically what we did here in the European Union was to even draw back on earlier discussions that happened on international level, OECD, United Nations, G7, G20, and so on. We're all thinking already about it. And basically, those international organizations, but also here in the European Union, our expert groups, and so on, were all indicating one thing. AI is not really something new. There are AI systems from, let's say, late 40s, early 50s, so-called symbolic AI, so rules-based system where an expert was including a certain code, and based on this code, the machines were operating. Those AI systems are already regulated, for example, by product safety legislation, data protection legislation, and so on. The things that OECD and EU and others were observing or monitoring in late 2017-18 was that with the rise of machine learning, deep learning, so the so-called second wave of artificial intelligence, there were a few new, let's call it, legal situations that were so far not covered by existing AI legislation, mainly triggered by characteristics like autonomy, complexity, unpredictability, and so on and so on. And all of that would then lead, for example, to a situation that you are harmed by the operation of an AI system and no one would be liable, or that there is a system on the European internal market that is creating a lot of problems, and the authorities, the market surveillance authorities, could not punish the company that was bringing the flawed product on the market, and so on and so on. And based on those legal gaps that the experts have identified, the idea was to create AI policy that is tackling those new characteristics of machine learning and deep learning systems, and kind of filling those legal gaps with new concepts that are introduced in our legal systems. This on a, let's say, very high level, as an explanation why there is an AI Act, and again, underlining that it's not something that only the European Union came up with, but it was really something that was coming out of common discussions and later on common decisions of the international community.
Are you happy with the law? Like, do you think that there are gaps? Are there areas that have not been covered, or do you sort of largely agree with what was proposed?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question for me because, as someone who was basically involved from the beginning, I do, of course, support a lot of things that are now in the final law. And I do agree, again, what we just discussed, that there are legal gaps, that we need to introduce something as European Union, but also other regions of the world, and so on. And I do think that a lot of points in the AI Act, in the final AI Act, make a lot of sense. There are, again, there is a strong international alignment. We took over a lot of points, again, from OECD, but also from the United States, from the executive order, and so on. We are using similar definitions. We are using all the same core principles. Then there are also new mechanisms or new concepts that we introduced in the AI Act, where we are convinced that those new legal concepts make it easier to have digital legislation that is also future proofed, because it can be adjusted at a later stage, because this was so far often a problem of EU digital laws that they became outdated very soon, because digital field is so fastly advancing. So maybe to stop there, there are a lot of positive points. And again, the general idea, we need to create something because there are legal gaps, I fully support. What I don't support is, unfortunately, the speed of the negotiations, and let's say the many, let's call it, content-wise decisions, or detailed decisions that have been taken, which often are not really evidence-based, and often basically discussions in this legislative process were really just in the middle, and then stopped from, let's call it, upstairs, because there was a European election. The AI Act was heavily delayed in its negotiations, and in front of the elections, people like the Commission's President Ursula von der Leyen, but also many parliamentarians, said, no matter how the AI Act is looking right now, we need to finish it in order to present it in the elections as a, let's say, positive step of this term. But the result was that, as I just outlined, a lot of things were not really well thought through. They were still in a kind of brainstorming state. And this, I think, will backfire quite a lot, because if you are now reading the AI Act, you will quickly realize that a lot of points are extremely vague, and maybe also certain elements are missing that are normally in a European law. And while this was now more on how the AI Act has been negotiated, a second point of criticism that I'm putting against the AI Act is indeed a principal decision that has been taken at the very beginning to use product safety legislation approach for the AI Act and to make the AI Act as a kind of horizontal law that is applicable to every use case, to every sector, and so on. I do object both decisions fundamentally because, first of all, I don't think that a product safety legislation approach is really fitting to artificial intelligence because it's something that works for washing machines, for vacuumers, for those products that are fixed and that are not evolving. But AI systems, they are evolving based on new input data and are also capable to be trained to perform later on new operations and so on and so on. So I think as a lawyer that this product safety legislation approach is not flexible enough to really capture AI. And the second conceptual point that I mentioned already is that by creating a horizontal AI Act that is applicable for everything, you are trying to shoehorn everything in one law, which is, in my opinion, again, not possible because AI is just so different when it's used in the financial sector, in the medical field, in whatever. And even within the medical field, the chances and the risks and the opportunities of and development of and deployment of an AI system are extremely different from use case to use case. So by trying to create obligations for all of those different systems, you are either creating something that is too detailed and not working or too broad and then kind of useless because everyone is easily fulfilling those obligations. So this may be to give you a rather broad reply to your questions that I do think there are a lot of good points in the AI Act, but those two critical points that I just outlined, I think, are hampering all of our success with the AI Act severely. And let's see, the jury is out if I'm right with those 2 points of criticism. And maybe at least for some time, the AI Act creates a lot of problems that then later on we need to fix.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the point. Well, to counter your first comment was basically you think that it was hastily pushed through, but I think as a rebuttal to that, the AI industry, especially with the advent of Gen AI and Open AI and large language models in general, now that has created so much exposure and there's so many more people trying to use AI for the first time, um, the market and the users for technologies like this has just ballooned. And with that the use cases are also going to balloon. So if you did delay the legislation, the regulation at all, then there's a risk that the timelines are already quite long. Some of the timelines are very many years into the future. It would just delay that even more. So I would argue that actually there probably did need to be something now, but it may not have been perfect. I agree.
No, no, and you are completely right. So I'm not talking about now that it would be smart to postpone the whole process by 2 years or 3 years or whatsoever. But well, we started our final so-called trialogue negotiations between the member state and the parliament in June, July last year, and then there was a big summer break and so on. And basically, we discussed the whole AI Act with 85 and now over 110 articles and over 100 recitals in the time between mid-September to end of November. And this is basically nothing for such a long text. So if we would have taken 2, 3, 4 more months, I think it would have been hugely beneficial for the legal soundness of the text. So it would have been just a small delay. But of course, politics has also other things to consider. And as I underlined, the leaders of European policymakers were thinking that it's more important to have an AI Act in front of the European election concluded already. And yeah, they call the shots.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I think so. So trying to pivot towards the implementation aspects, which I think you've already mentioned that there's still a large amount of work that needs to be figured out. Have you already worked with or spoken to any companies that are already attempting to implement the technical requirements of the regulation? What has been what were the challenges that they faced? What are the biggest pains that they feel like they're going to go through when they try and do that?
Yeah. Um, I can answer that by also going back a little bit to what you just have said. And again, there I do think that the AI Act is doing a lot of very, very positive things. I do agree, and all companies that or basically all companies that I have spoken to also agree that principles like do a proper data governance, do not use discriminatory data sets, do make sure that there is a human oversight, at least in particular risky situations. For example, if a robot is doing a surgery and there are maybe still certain situations where it could go wrong. I think most of us would like to have a doctor basically in the background at least, and so on. All of those, again, is going back to OECD core principles, ethical principles that many people agreed to, where there's a large political agreement for. Um, so this is definitely good. The problem in the AI Act is that the AI Act is not, as the European Parliament proposed at the beginning, leaving it to general principles that are then further defined in sectorial legislation, a little bit like what you are seeing now in the United States with the executive order and then agencies that are sectorially applying the executive order, but also the AI Bills of Rights. Here in Europe, we have those principles that are further defined in articles, for example, in risk management, Article 9 of the AI Act. And this article is, however, already going quite a bit to details, and even more articles like Article 11 on technical documentation that is combined with Annex 4, that is a 3-page annex with a lot of details, what you need to write down, for example, that you need to put together the level of energy consumption of your AI system and so on. And even on that level, most companies that I speak to are saying, well, makes sense. We are willing to provide this data. But again, we left basically the level of general principles and are now already at a level of details that companies cannot really provide this data without having standardized forms to do that or having more input how to do it. In the end, in 2, maybe 3 years, maybe the AI Act is adequately complemented by technical standards that are currently being discussed from CENELEC, the European standardization body, and maybe also complemented by guidelines, delegated acts, implementing acts from the European Commission, and so on, that would then basically tell you, okay, energy consumption in this case should clarify or should provide those and those numbers. And then again, going back to what companies told me, basically no one would have a problem with. What companies currently struggle is that this level of details is completely empty, and therefore they are afraid that in sometimes already 1 year or even in 6 months already when it's coming to the prohibition, you are facing obligations without anyone knowing how to fulfill those obligations. And then we are coming back to a typical European Union problem. There are very likely a lot of member states where you can feel very safe as a company, because if there are not no clear rules, the enforcement bodies in those member states will not do anything. So you will not face any fines and so on. But in the European Union, there are always some member states, and especially my home country, Germany, that is taking it often very serious and is often even interpreting rules stronger than they were meant at the beginning. And
Mm.
those companies that I speak to are especially now afraid that in those member states, in the next 2, 3 years, things will be enforced without them being able to implement anything until then. So actually, the big risk now, and this is summarizing our whole talk a little bit, are really those next 2, 3, 4 years where the vague AI Act is just creating a lot of legal uncertainty, which is creating this feeling among AI developers and deployers that even though they want to be compliant with the AI Act, they don't really have a chance to do that. And last point, this is of course the area where you and other firms are coming in that are providing some advice, some service to maybe also connect actors to say a company, look, there's a best practice that is being used in this sector. Maybe it's something you can adjust to your use case and then you could use in order to fulfill this obligation. But of course, all of those things need to be established first. And again, especially in the next months, in the next 2, 3 years, in this try and error period, I think the level of legal uncertainty is just extremely high, which is counterproductive for what the European Union wanted to achieve with the AI Act.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting that you use the word legal uncertainty there. Do you think that this is largely a legal problem, or do you think that this does affect the engineering implementation of the systems as well?
Yeah. I think mainly it's a legal problem that we have a lot of excellent developers in the European Union that are making um, basically every day, a day new breakthroughs, are creating new approaches and so on and so on. I don't think, and also what I hear, those people are not super close to the regulatory front, so they are hearing a little bit, okay, I need to develop something in this direction, but without close cooperation with regulatory experts, I think they will just continue to do their great work. What is then the problem is, speaking now for bigger companies, if the compliance team doesn't really know how to advise the developers, the technical people, and then there is miscommunication between those two. Or maybe the compliance team is telling the developers, don't develop at the moment in this direction because maybe it's creating a huge liability risk, for example. So yeah, it's I think this is tricky, and connected with this problem is, of course, the issue of investments, where the European Union is lagging behind now for many, many years compared to the United States or to China and also other areas like Israel and so on. Um, our AI developers often do not find enough funding, especially for the scale up period in startups and so on. And of course, especially again speaking as a German, we are very risk adverse. We don't like to take risks. And if there is a lot of legal uncertainty, I don't expect many companies to take a risk to invest millions or even billions in an AI product where they don't really know if this product would be compliant with the AI Act or would need to fulfill so many extra obligations that in the end it would become too expensive for the market, for example. So those 2 points, I think, are the biggest risk right now. It's not so much a technical problem, but more a legal and financial problem.
Yeah, that's really interesting because obviously, like the whole a lot of the document is spent talking about how they're trying to encourage and foster growth and
Yes.
innovation and things like that. But the things that you just said there are kind of actively stifling it. Um,
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's really sad because there are a lot of good ideas in the AI, and it still can become a success story. As I said, there
mm,
are a lot of future-oriented mechanism, a lot of public-private partnership ideas in the AI Act. So we really wanted to create this kind of constant exchange between technical experts, people on the ground, and also regulator, policy people, and so on, in order to build up together an AI governance ecosystem. But yeah, the big issue is just that this will take time and that the starting point is so vague that right now, unfortunately, I guess those new rules are really, as you said, or more hampering innovation than promoting innovation.
okay, yeah. So well, but it is here to stay, right? So
Yes,
irrespective of all of that, yeah, we're going to have to deal with it at some point.
indeed.
Hopefully, the the various bodies are going to be able to help us along
Yeah,
that process. But for now, do you have any recommendations about what people should be looking at now? What should people be thinking about? Where do you think that they should start thinking first?
yeah. So indeed, it's all about for the greater good and for the individual case, it's all about accelerating this process of reducing legal uncertainties and complementing the AI Act and really establishing this fully fledged AI governance system. Again, all of us are playing a part in it. Now, speaking about myself, the policy people, speaking about your sides, or let's say more advisors, speaking about AI developers, and so on. We need, for example, to identify enough AI talent for also the enforcement bodies, for national competent authorities, for the commission, because without having competent people there, AI developers will have problems to tell the commission or report some problems to them, because people in the commission will be completely unable to understand what those AI geniuses from the ground are telling them. So this is a more general topic. When it's now coming to the particular company that, for example, is working on a commercial product and is not really sure how now the AI Act or what the AI means to them. Well, I think there are four main strategies. First of all, if this company is able, they should really try to join national or European standardization bodies in order to really bring in their particular or unique perspectives that they have on a particular AI system. If they are not able to do it, well, what they should at least then do is provide or transfer their knowledge, their expertise via other companies, via trade associations, via consultancies, via whoever networks in this standardization bodies. Because, as I said, harmonized standards in the end will be basically the main instrument to become compliant. And if now one sector is missing or use cases are missing, it would be really bad, let's say it simple, for the final outcome. The second point, the second strategy that an individual company could do is to collect concrete data on particular use cases and send those use cases to the Commission, to national competent authorities in the member states, in order to help them to draft the best possible secondary legislation. So, for example, guidelines on what exactly will be prohibited in the future. Article 5, where the prohibitions are being listed, as I said before, is so vague that no one right now understands what social scoring, it's the third prohibition, actually means. It could be something that banks are using, it could be something that insurances are using, and so on. Now the Commission really depends on good contributions by not only banks and insurances, but many other players that are flagging certain use cases that could qualify as social scoring, but are not really that bad or have a lot of advantages, so shouldn't be banned. So also on this part, it's really important to provide use cases. The third point is a third strategy is really to make use of those, I talked already about it, public-private partnerships mechanisms like regulatory sandboxes that allow you as a company to engage closely with the regulators or with the enforcement bodies and kind of figure out how to become compliant in an efficient way. To give an example, if you are doing something in the critical infrastructure area, you could then join a sandbox and say to the enforcement body, look, I have those and those issues. I think I would qualify as a high risk AI system under Annex 3.2. And I'm not 100% sure if by operating in that way, I fulfill human oversight, Article 14. The regulator in the sandbox will test with you how to do it best in order to fulfill the AI Act. And the fourth point, the fourth strategy is I already spoke about the bigger or larger good so that we all need to work together. But every particular company should really think about building up their own compliance team. Most of them will already have a data protection officer for GDPR. Maybe it's necessary to also create a position of an AI officer, and also be aware that GDPR and the AI Act is not the only uh, digital law that is coming from the European Union. There's now also the DSA, there is the Cyber Resilience Act, and so on. So maybe even smaller companies need to think about creating a bigger compliance team, which includes experts that are covering all those different obligations, of course, depending on what kind of sectors your products are falling in. Maybe I will keep it to those 4 points, but it shows that if you are now already becoming active, if you are kind of having a very proactive, very early stage approach as a company, you will probably benefit a lot because you are right from the start heavily involved in the additional complementation and shaping of the AI governance ecosystem that I was talking about.
How are companies that are external to the European Union to interface with these various policy decisions when potentially they don't even have a presence in the EU?
Yeah. Yeah. So the issue is that once you are looking into, let's say, bringing your products on the European market, making it available, placing it on the market, or putting it into use, you are obliged to create a representative at least. So the role of a representative here within the European Union, and by doing that, you would need to fulfill a lot of things. So then you are not really different to a European company because you need to follow the same rules. Where it's becoming really tricky is that, of course, there are maybe cases where a UK startup or a startup from Canada, first of all, just want to develop and commercialize their products and services only for their own market. But of course, we are speaking about the digital field, and data doesn't know borders, to say it simple. And then maybe what happens if an AI system that is only being developed for the Canadian market is taken from a Canadian tourist to Europe when he is enjoying here 2 times of a career break, for example. Unfortunately, because of Article 2 of the AI Act, and I'm saying unfortunate for this person, this case could qualify for an AI system that falls under the scope of the AI Act. Could, for example, then be obliged to fulfill Article 5, the prohibitions, the high risk AI chapter, and so on, which means then also that for these Canadian companies, there could be some obligations, even though it doesn't want to do anything in Europe. This will be one of the big questions that needs to be fulfilled. Maybe trade agreements could solve it a little bit. Maybe there will be even court cases about this point, because legally this issue falls also in this category of being very, very shortly discussed. A lot of potential problems has been flagged, but then we needed to finish our political negotiations on the AI Act. And with the solutions that you now find in the AI Act in Article 2, there are a lot of scenarios where no one really right now can say in this situation the following things are happening. No, it's the opposite. If you talk to what we are always saying, 2 lawyers, you will probably get 6 opinions or something. So it's indeed potentially also here a huge risk, even for non-European companies, when it comes to the AI Act, until this problem has been solved a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah, it's not quite the answer we want to hear right now,
No,
but
it's a lot. AI Act is a big question mark right now. This is all I can say.
Right. I guess, do you have any final words or final thoughts for anyone that would like to either maybe follow what you're doing potentially, or what would you like them to go away and think about and do?
Yeah. So I think the most important point I already said, that those actors, not only companies, also university networks or whatsoever, whoever you are, if you are interested in artificial intelligence and especially in AI policy, be active, engage. For example, right now there's a process of so-called drafting of a general purpose AI model code of practice, a very long word, but this code of practice will determine how the extremely vague chapter on foundation models, so GPT-4 that is behind ChatGPT, are to be understood. If in the end only large companies like Microsoft are being involved in this process, we will have a certain outcome that potentially is very technically very sound, but maybe overlooking other perspectives. Again, this shows how important it is to get engaged very early on, and even if you are a small player, to try to make it work. And only then I think the final outcome that we are achieving here in Europe is really up to speed. So this would be my most important point. If you want to follow what we are here doing in Brussels, there are a lot of actors you could follow. The AI Office of the European Commission is doing some public announcements that you can find on the Commission page. In the European Parliament, I guess it's mostly my boss, Axel Voss, myself, Svenja Hahn from the Liberals, Kim von Spantak from the Greens, where you can probably best follow us via LinkedIn and Twitter. And then you see basically what our concerns are, or when we are feeling that stakeholders need to have a look on a specific point, we are often announcing it there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kai. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. If you have any questions about any of the content in this video, then please email me at phil@winder.ai. If you're interested in talking about any of the implementation projects that might be required to comply with EU AI Act, then definitely reach out to us. You can visit our website at winder.ai. And of course, if you're interested in AI in general, then you can also check out the website for more articles or in future events. That's all for now. I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.